Welcome into another edition of the Boiler Banter Podcast. I am your host, Dustin Schutte, with Purdue Boilermakers on SI, and I'm going to just jump right into it today. We have got a special guest, the first ever guest of the Boiler Banter Podcast, Kraig Bowers of the Boilers in the Stands podcast. And I'm just going to jump in and Kraig, if people aren't listening to you, it is one of my favorite Purdue podcasts. I listen to it. People know I drive from St. Louis to West Lafayette an awful lot. I listen to you guys on the way in, listen to the post game on the way out. One of the best podcasts. So I am very thankful to have you joining us and talking a little Purdue basketball today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. Obviously, a huge day yesterday with Scrimmage Day. We actually got to see the team go against each other and see what some of these guys are going to look like. I don't know how much we learned, but nonetheless, we got our first look at what some of these guys are going to look like in a competitive setting in terms of the newcomers that came over.
Well, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today was Fan Day, because I was not there yesterday. I was stuck watching the thrilling football game. And so you were in attendance, and not only did you get to check out, some of those, I saw videos of the massive lines to get autographs for TKR, Braden, and Fletch. But obviously you got to see the team get split up in a couple different teams, play, I think, 3 12-minute scrimmages throughout the day. I'm going to throw it over to you and just kind of what were your general thoughts and takeaways from those couple of scrimmages?
I mean, I think obviously you got to start with like the big three. The big three still look really, really good. Braden drops a pass within the first 5 minutes of the first scrimmage that, Greg happened to capture and put up on our Boilers in the Stands Twitter page that immediately went viral because Braden was just doing Braden things. And TKR is still a beast. Fletcher didn't have a great shooting day, but not going to be worried at all about who Fletcher is going to be. We know he's going to be one of the best three-point shooters in the country. Those three guys, are the staples. So then for me, in terms of big impressions, it's looking at how did everybody else take a jump? How did they improve from last year? And what are the newcomers going to be able to do? And I think the first thing that has to jump out is even though the teams were split, right, and they're playing against each other, there's much more of a defensive presence on this team. I think CJ and Jakari both have grown as perimeter defenders. Antoine West was just a terror on defense. We can talk about a little bit more about Antoine a little bit later, but a much better perimeter defensive pressure. And then on the back end of that, you've got Jacobson providing some rim pressure. And Oscar Kofv, I think if there's one story about yesterday, it's that we are undervaluing, though everybody's been high on Kofv, I think we're still undervaluing what he can mean for this team in terms of them being a championship contender, because he just eats every single rebound. And we can talk about the defense, we can talk about some other stuff, but the primary issue last year was rebounding, right? And if you're getting more offensive rebounds, if you're cleaning up the defensive glass and preventing them from getting offensive rebounds, that's automatically going to improve your defensive metrics. But on top of that, hey, he's a good post player with back to the basket moves. He can run pick and roll. If TK's on the bench, he can just keep running pick and roll with Braden, and operates in that space just fine. He's a heck of a screener. He's a great passer. Had a nice skip pass yesterday. Had a nice interior pass. He's going to mean a lot to this team and their ability to get to a Final Four again.
One of the things that, and this has been talked about both by Trey Kaufman-Wren and by Matt Painter, and it's something that I don't ever really think about until it's brought up, just kind of one of those, I don't know if it's over the head, but is that not only does Oscar Kofv eat up a lot of rebounds himself, but at the same time, then that allows other guys, because he's taking on those bigger bodies. Trey Kaufman said, I think it was after the very first practice, he was looking forward to it because now you have somebody who can take on a 5. Trey Kaufman-Wren's not having to box out another 5. You have Oscar Kofv. So that's going to open up the rebounding, not just for Kofv to pull in 10 to 12 per game, but they're going to be more effective with TKR being able to get more rebounds. Maybe some of the guards are able to get more rebounds. It's just it's a trickle down effect where Kofv not only is a tremendous rebounder, but he's a guy who takes up a lot of space on the glass. And the other thing that I thought was interesting yesterday, and I think it was in your video of Matt Painter speaking afterwards.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it was also Oscar Kofv is a good, I'm not going to say probably to the same versatility level. I don't know. Maybe you can speak to this as a Caleb First in terms of being able to switch off and guard the perimeter. But he did say and mention something about that where he can at least step out and stay in front of a guy if that's something that they're going to have to do from time to time.
Yeah, Lusk actually came over to the media sitting at the scorer's bench yesterday after Kofv had done something. And just said, are you guys seeing this? He is an elite switch defender. And in terms of a big coming up, being able to high hedge and do those sort of things on the perimeter. And I didn't really notice it, I guess, just watching on film. Casey Bartley is the first one who actually said something to me about it. And then I kind of started to pay a little bit more attention. And then Lusk came over and just said something to us at the media table yesterday about how good he is and what they're going to be able to do defensively because of that. But like you said, he carves out a lot of space as well for everybody else to come in there and get rebounds. And this Purdue team last year was one of the highest in terms of fast break and transition efficiency. They just didn't do it much because you got to rebound to be able to go, right? And Braden loves to dive in there, get the rebound himself, and turn and really push the ball. And with Kofv in there, that's going to provide that opportunity, not only for TKR to come over, because obviously, if you look at his numbers when he was playing next to Edey, I guess it was just 4 rebounds a game, but especially the second half of that season, he really picked up his rebounding from that 4 spot. When he's playing against other 4s, he's got the size advantage. It's really hard for other 4s to box him out. So if Kofv's eating up that space, he's going to be able to get in there and get more rebounds this year and be more impactful. But at the same time, your guards are going to be able to get in there as well when Kofv's eating that space and just turn and go and push the ball.
Right. And I think to that point, I mean, I don't think he's obviously not the same player as Mason Gillis, but I think even when he was averaging 4 rebounds, the thing you have to remember with that when he was alongside Edey is Gillis was getting more minutes. He just wasn't the starter. And he was averaging, I think, around 4 rebounds that season as well. So you're not going to just automatically say TKR is going to get 8 rebounds per game, right? But I think that's the point when he can box out a 4 and he's the most physical player at that position in the conference and maybe even in the country. I think you're going to expect him to be a little bit more of an effective rebounder. One guy that has kind of stood out to me throughout the summer, and then again, obviously didn't see him yesterday, but I was able to speak with him after a practice. And one guy I'm going to have my eye on, and I want your take on this too, is Jakari Harris. When I talked to him, and this is kind of a summary of how everybody within Purdue's program is. When I talked to him about kind of the specifics and the things he wanted to improve on, he was so detailed. It wasn't just, hey, I want to be a better defender. It was, I want to be a better defender. Here's how I do that. I can't embrace the screens. I got to find a way to get around those screens. I got to be a better communicator. I got to be a better leader. Like, he wants to be a leader on this team. And so he talked to me about 2 or 3 minutes just about defensive things that he wanted to improve on this season. But then he also said, like, hey, I'm a 40% 3-point shooter. What we did last season, I struggled early on, had some nerves, kind of getting into a rhythm, learning the offense. But now everything's becoming more instinctual. And I'm just curious, maybe from yesterday or some of I think you've been to probably a few more of the practices than I have been to. He looks like a guy playing with a lot more confidence and a guy who's playing with more instinct than having to go through that thought process like he did his freshman year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jakari is definitely improved. Just watching him through practices, watch him in the scrimmage. And, there's 2 different things in terms of being a good perimeter defender. I mean, there's multiple things, but to me, there's how good are you as a on-ball defender, man on man. Mm-hmm. And then there's how good are you as a team defender? How good are you navigating those screens, just being in rotations, all of those sort of things. And, we've had Rafael Davis on our show before, and he talked about just how hard it is for that to become instinctual, and that it's usually more than a year process. Like, it takes a while. And you can just see with Jakari and CJ both. It's instinctual now, right? They don't have to think about it. And when you're not worried about what's my rotation, who do I cover in this situation? Am I hedging? Am I am I reading the ball and icing it to one side? All those sort of things. And it just is instinctual. Then it allows you to do everything else with so much more efficiency and at a higher level. So I really think with CJ and Jakari both, they both improved defensively. And if you paid attention to Jakari the last 2-3 months of the season last year, he was shooting at a 40% clip that, at the end of that. And early on, there was something about his form. I don't remember exactly what it was now that just seemed a little bit off. And you watch him shoot right now, and that, just his structure and form of the way he goes about shooting the ball looks super, super smooth, and he's shooting it with a lot of confidence. He took a deep one yesterday in that scrimmage at one point, and I don't think he hit it, but he didn't hesitate about taking a deep one, and I don't think that's something he would have done last year. He shoots 4 of 8 from 3 yesterday, 50% from 3. I guess, talking about maybe things that jump out, you can't not talk about the fact that the 2 leading scorers on this team were the 2 sophomore guards that, quite frankly, to some degree by the national media, have been an afterthought coming into this season. They want to talk about Meyer. They want to talk about Kofv. They want to talk about the big 3, and they never really focus much on, hey, the guys that were here last year are going to get better. And, oh, by the way, one of those guys went off on a 12-point run by himself to help us beat Alabama last year. We know he can heat up. Oh, by the way, Jakari was shooting 40% from 3 last year. I think they've been forgotten in this mix as we talk about what this team can do. But you add in the fact that Jakari's shooting the ball really well. We know what CJ can do from a scoring standpoint. He attacked the rim, especially in transition yesterday, more than I remember seeing last year. He finishes with 15 points, also shoots 50% from 3. And then you add Kofv in there or Jacobson. You have to guard all 5 guys. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what you do, because last year they could kind of cheat off of first, and at times when they didn't have their confidence, they would kind of cheat off Jakari or cheat off of CJ. And I don't think they're going to be able to do that this year. And you just got to pick your poison. And then, by the way, you have the best passer possibly in the history of college basketball by the time the season's done. How do you stop that?
Right. And not only that, but in the same breath, you have the best passer who is confident in his teammates. He wants them to be able to pull the trigger. Not selfishly, but he wants those assists, right? He has the utmost confidence in those guys. And we heard even to the extent of Fletcher Lawyer at Big Ten Media, I think it was Media Days, but it might've been one of those practices where he just said, I got somebody here who's telling me to shoot. I went through, it's not every player is going to hear from their head coach, you need to shoot more, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not like Lawyer is hesitant. At times he can be hesitant, but it's not like he's gun shy and averaging 2 shots per game. He gets a good look. He's usually pulling the trigger. So the fact that more aggressive, and I think that is going to translate to Jakari and CJ this year. And those are 2 kids that I agree with you. And I don't think they put up huge numbers in the first 2 rounds of those NCAA tournament games, but they played critical roles. And I know the McNeese State game was a bit more of a blowout, but in that first game against High Point, they each had big moments throughout those first 2 games. And so I think that probably also helped their confidence a little bit more heading into the off season. So I'm really excited to see now. I was going to save this question for later, but I'm going to kind of insert it in here now. I have a pretty good idea of who I think the 4 starters are going to be. Who in your mind is going to be that 5th starter? I'm assuming it's going to be Oscar Kofv, Trey Kaufman-Renn, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer. My thought has been it would be Jakari Harris, but it's a complete shot in the dark. I have no idea who's going to fill that 5th spot. And maybe you don't either. It's also a guess, but I'd like to hear your take on that.
I mean, I do think it's still up in the air, and I think if you would, Painter talks all the time, right, about I don't award starting spots. You earn it in competition, mm-hmm. right? So if you asked him going into the scrimmage, who's your 5th starter right now before the scrimmage starts, he might have said one name, and by the time the Kentucky Exhibitions game is over, he may be saying another name. It's my understanding that I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard from sources that I rely on pretty well that like last year, nobody really knew Jakari was going to start until last minute when he started the season last year. And like including Jakari. So I think I don't know that they know yet. So like all of us sitting here trying to prognosticate and pick out who it is right now, it's fun. But if you made me say today, it's CJ or Jakari in my mind. It's one of those two. Meyer's still trying to assimilate to this team. There's some videos out there, and there was yesterday's moments where you see that next level playmaking and vision, like Braden has. But there was also some times where he's pretty loose with the ball. I think he was credited with 3 turnovers. I think there was a few more that probably got attributed to somebody else when they got their hand on it. There was an alley-oop that bounces off the rim. He's got to. You don't want to kill his creativity, right? Because Braden had to work through that too and work through those turnovers to become who he is. But he's got to tighten up the ball with the ball a little bit and just kind of pick when to make those extra special passes and when to make the simple play. And he's also just, he's only been here for 2 months. So to me, he's still trying to figure out those things that we now say are instinctual for Jakari and CJ. West, like the dude was a dog defensively. I love his size. He's got a freakish wingspan. I think he's a guy against big guards, big athletic guards that Purdue may face from other teams could provide something potentially that nobody else on this team can defensively. But the dude may redshirt still. Like, there's still a chance where Antoine West redshirts. And if he doesn't redshirt, there's a world where he figures out a way to get on the court for 15 minutes a game. So Purdue's just so deep this year, and Purdue is so stacked in that guard room. But to me, Jakari and CJ have both taken that next step. To me, they are the jammers. Painter's going to want to have a jammer up there defensively. They're going to take on the most important perimeter defensive assignment every night. And they've both shown they're capable offensively and just gotten better from last year coming into this year. So if you held me to my feet to the fire today, I don't think CJ's done anything to lose that starting position. And I think CJ's done nothing to lose that starting position. Like I just said, and I think he's just getting better. So to me, I think Painter probably just rolls with CJ until there's a reason not to.
I think that's a fair comment. And like I said, was not at the scrimmages. I have not been through practice. And like you said, it could be CJ today. It could be Jakari tomorrow. And it could be CJ then again on Friday. Who knows? But we'll see. One of the things that you mentioned, and I'm going to talk about just a few more guys here before we kind of dive into a little bit of the Kentucky talk. And that is, I wanted to hit on the same thing you mentioned with Omer, and it was the turnover issue. I am curious to know, and I don't know that you would know the answer to this, but like, obviously he's only been there 2 months. He was on when I watched the FIBA Eurobasket and the FIBA World Cup, he was kind of their offense. And I'm not saying he didn't trust his teammates, but he was required to create a lot. And that meant taking some risks. So he had a lot of turnovers. There were some plays where you thought, wow, how's he going to be able, how can he do that? Make some really impressive passes. Then there's other plays. It's like, just get rid of the ball, man. Like you're dribbling too much around the perimeter. So I do wonder if, this is going to be a completely different player in January and February than we're seeing right now, just because he is still so new to this offense, to this team, and still maybe kind of developing that team chemistry, that trust among his teammates. So that's something that I'll be interested in. And then another guy that I think is getting absolutely no attention outside of West Lafayette is Jack Benter. I remember watching him in that first scrimmage or the first practice that we were able to attend. And it seemed like he was all over the floor. Like he didn't get every rebound, but he was around the ball all afternoon long. And this is a guy who I think can play the 2 through 4. Painter said he was a guy that played point guard in high school. Like he's shattering rims. He's super athletic. I don't know that he's going to be a guy that plays 15 to 18 minutes a game, but I feel like he's going to be one of those traditional guys that comes in for 8 to 10 minutes in certain games. And it's just like, where did this kid come from? Like, he's going to contribute in ways that I think that will maybe surprise some people that aren't Purdue fans.
Yeah, and just real quick to go back to Meyer real quick, like I think the kid's going to be special. I want to make sure people realize I'm not trying to knock on the kid or anything like that. He's going to be special. It's just a matter of when is that going to happen. And you'll hear Painter talk a lot about, one, you have to fit around our superstars. So how does he fit? Who is the best guard to fit around Fletcher and Braden with who you have down low? And then the second thing is, if you're playing shorter minutes and the ball isn't going to be in your hand all the time, do you take care of the basketball when you have it? Do you make the right decision when you have it? And can you shoot efficiently enough on small volume? So I think those are the things he's going to have to get acclimated to, because you're right. And FIBA, the ball was in his hands. He was shooting a lot of his shots off of the bounce. He was the main creator basically 80% of the time on the court. So he's just got to get used to that. Going to Banter, though, I mean, this year specifically, his route to minutes is at the backup 4 spot, because we've just talked about how stacked the guard room is. Mm-hmm. And you've got Fletcher that's going to play 32 minutes at the 3. And I think you're going to spread the rest of those minutes as, backup for 1 through 3 between whichever 2 guards aren't starting, right? Of the 5 that we've kind of talked about, unless West doesn't redshirt, then maybe you're spreading it between 3. So really the spot on this team, just kind of out of necessity, that Benner can insert himself is in those backup 4 minutes behind TKR. And at 6'6", I mean, that's primarily where I've seen him practice all summer. That's primarily where we saw him in the scrimmage yesterday. Mason Gillis was 6'6". I think he was listed at 6'8" on the Purdue roster when he went to, and if you looked at Mason next to like true 6'8" guys, don't know that I ever would have said that he was a true 6'8", and when he goes to Duke, he's listed at 6'6" on the roster. So like, I don't think Benner's that much smaller. I don't think Benner's that much smaller than what Gillis was. And like you said, he gets in the scrum. He's not always going to win the battle, but he gets in there and fights. And we saw yesterday what he can do when he gets hot. And that third scrimmage, he was on a team with Smith and a few other guys, and they were getting blown out. And with about, I want to say a little bit under a minute to go, he hits a 3, comes right back, hits another 3, hits a third 3, and the refs call a cheap call on the floor that, like, in the NBA, it's definitely continuation. I thought even as a college rule, like TK just put his hand on him. That's all it was. He was just trying to get a foul before he got the shot off. But drills that one too. So 3 straight 3s in a row, 9 points, brings that team back to the point where they almost win. And he has that elite shooting ability where he can just get hot and go off, but he also can take the ball off the bounce a little bit. He's an elite passer for a guy that's 6'6". I like, in my mind, he's won the backup 4 minutes. So he may only get 8 minutes a game on the season because TK is going to play 32. I think you heard Painter say last year, 32 minutes a game is there's points of diminishing return with all players. Mm-hmm. With Braden, that's 45 minutes, at least in Painter's mind, it seems like, right? With TK, he openly said, like, 32 minutes is where we like it. We get past that, we get to a level of fatigue and that type of stuff where he doesn't maybe play quite as efficiently or starts to pick up some fouls. So to me, we're probably going to see Banter or Murphy for about 7-8 minutes a game. And my bet right now is that's probably Banter.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, and obviously we haven't seen him in a game yet, but to me, he seems like the most reliable. And what I mean by that is not that he's maybe a better overall. I just feel like he's the guy that's going to come in and be able to give you the effort that Painter looks for and talks about. Like, he's the guy that embodies make the most of your 8 to 10 minutes when you're out there. Like, and that's not to say Liam Murphy isn't that guy, but it's just from what I've seen. And part of it too is Murphy was hurt. He dealt with that shoulder surgery, so he wasn't able to go full go until fall. And I don't know what his restrictions have been. It is funny. I'll bring up one more point too, because I thought this was funny at Big Ten Media Days. Brian Newbert from Golden Black actually asked the question, like, when you have a guy like Omer, and then you also have Jakari and CJ in the backcourt, and if you want to throw Antoine West in that mix, obviously, can you scale back Braden's minutes? And Painter was like, we could, but if we're going to do that, we might as well just scale back our practices. Like, he's like, it's not going to make 3 minutes is not going to make a difference on Braden Smith in the course of a game. And I think a lot of people looked at, there were times when Purdue just struggled offensively when Braden couldn't find a shot. And a lot of people thought it's because he's playing 39, 40 minutes every single night. Sometimes guys are just going to have off nights. Doesn't matter how many minutes they're playing. Braden could have played 35 minutes. He's still going to have a bad shooting night or a bad pass, whatever the case might be. It's when you're over the course of a 31 game season, you're going to have 1 or 2 games where you just don't play well. But I did think that was interesting, where I thought Painter might say something along the lines, but he, of maybe we're going to play him 35 to 36 minutes instead of 38. I don't know. But he was also adamant about that when he talked about Zach Edey. Like, yeah, he's playing 30, 32 minutes a game because I don't like taking him off the floor. And he also hit it at this too. Like, when you play other guys, when you have a deep rotation, it's great for when you get into foul trouble, injuries, that sort of thing. But then if you play more guys, you're giving your stars less time on the floor. And we definitely don't want to do that. So I thought that was an interesting perspective. Basically, like, if Braden's playing well, he'll play 38 to 40 minutes a night.
Yeah, 100%. And he talks about that often. Like, I want my best players on the court as much as they can. Obviously, he says those things, but he's also openly talked about, like, we know there's a minute point for certain players where we see diminishing returns. So, I mean, it depends on each player and who it is, but he likes to eventually whittle that down to about an 8-man rotation. I have a feeling that just with this team and the depth they have, we could see this be a 9-man rotation late in the year, but he's not playing 10 or 12 guys like you'll see, like Florida State used to do, or Tom Izzo will do at times, where you almost have these like hockey shift type changes. That's never who Matt Painter has been, and I don't expect it this year either. No.
And so moving forward then, obviously a big exhibition game on Friday night, number 1 Purdue, number 9 Kentucky at Rupp Arena. I've actually been to Rupp Arena once, but not for a game. I played college tennis at Manchester, and we went to Transylvania University. That was not a Dracula reference. That was actually the name of the school. And they shared a lot of their facilities. So I was able to walk through Rupp at that time. So this will be my second time, first for a game. I have an idea of a thought of what we'll see on Friday in terms of the exhibition. I think last year when Purdue played Creighton, they were still trying to figure some things out and tinkering with some rotations and some lineups. I feel like we're going to see a little bit. I think we'll see that to an extent, but I feel like Painter may have a pretty good idea of what he wants to do and how he wants the rotations to work for this one. I feel like this is not going to be as much of a let's work different guys in with different rotations. I think he has a pretty good understanding of who's going to work well with who. So I wouldn't expect to. I guess what I'm saying is this to me is going to be very similar to what we would see in game 1 against Evansville.
I don't know that I agree with you on that completely.
Okay.
Because I think there's some guys on here that they got to figure out if they're going to redshirt or whether they're going to play.
Okay.
I think there are some rotations of just like, what does it look like if we put TK at the 5 and we have Murphy out there at the 4, or we have Benter out there at the 4, that honestly don't think we'll see a lot of during the regular season, but they might want to see what it looks like against a top 10 type team, just in case they do think they might want to go to it at some point during the season. So I think we will see just some rotations and some lineups out there that aren't what we might see in game 1. That's my take. I'm not saying it's right. We'll find out. Might be completely wrong. They're not going to scout for this. They talked a lot about that, in the Arkansas game, that like they're not doing any sort of a scout. They're not drawing up a game plan or anything like that. They know they've got their base package and their actions that they want to run, and they're going to go out and see what that looks like. I would also expect to see a few more minutes of Meyer running the point in this Kentucky scrimmage, just to see okay, where is he right now? Before we play Alabama, where is Omer Meyer right now if we need to go to him at some point in that game? And when you were talking about Braden and rest, I think one thing that often gets overlooked is there's two different ways for him to get rest or a break, right? One is to go to the bench. I don't think that's going to happen in any more minutes than previously. But if Meyer's in there, or quite frankly, even West, you can give them the ball and say, all right, you run the offense. Braden, you get to go stand in the corner for a couple of plays. And we saw them do that a few times last year with CJ or Jakari. And yeah, he's out there, he's still playing, but it's not quite the same pressure as having the ball in your hands, having to bring it up the court, having to get dogged defensively and everything. So it's kind of a break without it being a break, if that makes sense to me. And so I think Purdue's going to want to see, what does it look like if we put the ball in Meyer's hands? If we put the ball in Meyer's hands and let him run things, and Braden's maybe playing the two for a few plays. So I lean towards we're going to see a lot of things we won't see game one, but that's just me.
I think that's a fair statement. And as you were kind of saying that, it's like, I'm thinking in my head, well, if the staff knows what they're going to get from their start, in theory, if they know what they're going to get from their starting five and they feel comfortable with that, why not experiment a little bit more? And this is also me fresh off of watching the Nebraska BYU, where that was, it felt like a real regular season game, right? I'm sure they did I don't know either of those rosters well enough to tell you if that's what it's going to look like. But anyway, so we'll see. I think you have a better chance of being right than I do. I just felt like last year because there were so many question marks, but there are some certain lineups and some certain players that are probably still looking to prove themselves moving forward. So
everything else about that game feels like a real game, right?
Yeah.
Like the media hype, the tickets, how many fans are going to be in attendance. There's nothing else about that game that makes it feel like an exhibition game. And it's got to be one of the higher profile exhibition games to be televised, since they've allowed teams to start doing that. It's going to be fun. I've never been to Rupp. I've never watched Kentucky play basketball live or been around their fans or anything like that. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a great opportunity and a great experience to catch a game in Rupp, and then also to see two top 10 teams in the preseason. I think that's going to be a lot of fun too. So I'm going to close out with this. We're going to talk, before we close out, we're going to also talk just a little bit of volleyball, because Kraig and I are both big volleyball followers and big volleyball fans. So you kind of hinted at it. I have my thoughts on this. Who do you think, if anybody on this team, is going to redshirt?
I think the two where you could see it possibly happening would be West. If you're just looking at it and saying, look, the dude could play. If you were short one of the other guards and you were going in the season saying, I need Antoine West Jr. to play 15 minutes a game, I would not change my outlook of what this team could accomplish at all. He is perfectly capable in my mind. But there's a lot of guys there, and there's only so many minutes, and it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that, because at the end of the day, the coaching staff talks to the players, but the players ultimately make the decision in the end, whether they want a redshirt or whether they don't. And it'll be interesting, because I'm in the mindset this year of like, hey man, push all the chips in. Like, this is the best chance you got. What if you run into a few teams along the way where you're like, man, we can't stop this 6'5" guard out there. He's killing us. And you can just grab Wes and say, hey, get out there with your 7-foot wingspan or whatever ridiculous wingspan that it is. I think plus 10 or something like that from his actual height. You know, like get out there, get us some stops. That's the way I lean, but I'm not the coach. I'm not the players. I hope we see Wes this year personally, on that roster. I think the other one's Burgess, right? The big man room is so stacked up. I think there's a misconception from a lot of fans that redshirts can only be taken in your freshman year. He worked back off of injury, had a similar procedure as what Jacobson did, but he's changed his body, man. Like I don't know how close you've paid attention, but he's changed his body. His stamina seems completely different, and that's really impressive. Doing that while you're nursing back an injury, and he had a steal and a breakaway dunk yesterday in the exhibition. He's had some good minutes as well. If you're him and you're like, all right, I'm behind, you know, he's that hybrid 4-5 to me. So I'm behind TKR. I'm probably behind Kofv. I'm probably behind Jacobson. And then there's going to be times where Purdue just needs a spacer at the 4, and want to go to Murphy or to Benter, most likely. So like with all of that, how much playing time am I going to get? And by the way, I still get to cash that NIL check this year while I'm just working on getting better. And then I can come back and Clough's gone, TKR's gone. Now then it's my time to try to really get some impactful minutes. So those would be my two. I have no insider knowledge one way or another. They may both say, hey, I want to be available to contribute minutes in any way possible this year and help Purdue get a national championship. Or they may look at it and say, got to make a decision based upon, you know, what it looks like my opportunity as a player are actually going to be. And a lot of times that pays off long-term for Purdue anyway, right? That means Purdue's just better from a continuity standpoint going forward.
Yeah, for sure. And coming into this season, because of them adding Omer Meyer, because they returned all 3 of the big 3, and had CJ and Jakari coming back, my thought was before the season started, Antoine West is probably going to be a redshirt. And then I watched him play, and I was like, I don't know if this kid is going to redshirt, because exactly what you said. There are going to be times where I feel like if you are having trouble with your on-ball defense, that's a guy that he's gone after Braden Smith. And I don't mean like physically, but he's been guarding the ball and created plays defensively that not a lot of people can play. And so that one's going to be the most interesting to me, I think. And again, just like you, I don't have any inside knowledge. I've talked to them about this. I haven't talked to coaching staff. I feel like Raleigh Burgess, it is probably in his, I just don't know where the minutes are going to come from, because you're not going to get it at the 5 spot. And it would be very rare to see it at the 4 spot even. So that's the one that I feel comfortable saying he's probably going to redshirt, but everybody else, like, and again, I don't know if you had the same reaction. I think I was talking to Dylan Sin. Like, we just walked in and you saw Antoine West stand on the far side of the court and you go, oh man, like that dude is ready for college basketball. Sometimes you see guys and you're like, they need to get into the weight room or whatever. But Antoine West kind of struggled for the first 20 minutes of that practice. And then he got comfortable and he was lighting it up from the 3-point line. He's getting after it defensively. Like, that kid is going to your, similarly to what you think Omer Meyer is going to be a star at Purdue. I think Antoine West, I think he has the potential to be like a bigger and better defensive Carson Edwards.
Yeah. I mean, I think West is going to be a star, and for people who their first time watching him was at the scrimmage yesterday. He goes 1 for 8 from 3. So you didn't get to see his best shooting night last night, but believe me, we've seen him in practice. This kid can shoot, and he's a little bit streaky, similar to Carson, where, he might start 0 for 4 and then he rattles off 5 in a row right after that. Similar to the way that Carson did. So that doesn't play necessarily great for this year, where he's going to be a lower volume shooter, right? And you more want guys who are like going to shoot 40% all the time plus, consistently, whether it's on high volume or low volume. But in practice, he really gets downhill and gets into the paint. And that's where offensively, I think he can do some stuff that maybe others can't, just because he has that length. He has that physicality about him. But we didn't see him do that in the scrimmage yesterday, which surprised me a little bit. But yeah, I think he's going to be a star. And you bring back West, you bring back Meyer, you bring back CJ, and bring back Chikari. If you can bring all those four guys together, and then you bring in Luke Ertl, like, Purdue's going to be just fine in the guard room.
Yep. And I think you've mentioned this. I'm going to have a column on it this week. And I'll save this discussion for a later day. But the now or never talk is crazy. Like, Purdue's going to be good. And as long as Matt Painter's the coach, Purdue's going to be just fine. So don't buy into the now or never. College basketball is weird. The NCAA tournament is, for lack of a better term, crapshoot. You have one bad night and your season ends. So I can't wrap my head around the national championship. I understand why the team has that national championship or bust mentality. But for fans, you got to enjoy this season, because I think it's going to be really special. So with that, now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the volleyball team, because the amount of talent that they lost in the transfer portal, to be 14-3, 5-2 in the Big Ten. They've had some big road wins. I texted Dave Shondell after the UCLA match, and that dude is fiery all the time. I don't think I've ever got a more fired up text at like 1 a.m. my time, just because they got that win. Like, I don't know how I know you're a big volleyball fan. I don't know how closely you followed the team and everything, but just your thoughts on what has been an overly successful start to this 25 season.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing. Well, first of all, I watch every single match. Volleyball is my second favorite collegiate sport to watch in terms of my own program, my own school as an alma mater. Absolutely love watching Purdue volleyball. I love fast-paced. I'm a instant gratification guy. I like really fast-paced. Let's score, scoring happening all the time. So to me, volleyball is super exciting. My daughter played in high school, so I got to kind of learn the sport a little bit more, and then just have grown to understand it more, watching Purdue over the last 7-8 years since I've moved back down here and started covering basketball and sports in other ways. I think it's amazing what he's done. He's talked openly about he thought about calling it quits in the days after all those transfers happened, but you lose, the two to the caliber of Chicoine and Hudson, and then you lose two more that are also extremely impactful to your program, and come out and are they third in the Big Ten right now in standings?
Yes, I think they're tied for third at 5-2, or maybe it's fourth, because Illinois may only have one loss still.
And look, okay. In terms of rankings, I think they're either the third or the fourth highest ranked Big Ten team right now. And I think it's amazing. And if it wasn't for the fact, that Nebraska is doing what Nebraska is doing, I think Shondell would be a no-brainer for Big Ten Coach of the Year for volleyball. But because Nebraska is Nebraska and looks like nobody can even come close to touching them, and has an otherworldly athlete, legitimately, I said after that match, Harper Murray's a top 5 athlete that I've ever watched live in any sport. Nebraska's coach will probably end up with Big Ten Coach of the Year, but that shouldn't take anything away from what Dave's been able to do and the way he's pieced together from the transfer portal. And to me, this team just looks more balanced in terms of all phases of the game than maybe what some recent teams have been in terms of what they can do defensively and offensively both. And Kenna Wallard stepped up, and, with that opening with Chicoine and Hudson leaving, she's stepped up in a big way, was National Player of the Week. Recently, Taylor Anderson, I think, still leads the Big Ten in assists. One of the best setters in the entire country, and can do things at the net that most setters can't do because of her size. And, on the back end, I know you follow as well, but a lot of other players have stepped up, whether it was transfer players coming in from the transfer portal or people who were already in the program?
Yeah. And I'll tell you a funny story is, so people would not know this, but so my fiance and I were at the Nebraska match, Purdue, Nebraska. So was Kraig. She was standing beside me the entire time. I failed to introduce. And so after the match, you had sent out that tweet about Harper Murray. And so she covers for a podcast called Go Big Redcast. She primarily does women's sports, but also weighs in on football and basketball and things like that. So I was a terrible fiance and friend because I failed to introduce the two of them despite standing 8 feet apart. But the funny thing is she was like, "Do I know Kraig?" And I said, "Yeah, he was the one I was talking to." And I just completely didn't introduce you. But the funny thing is she's also a big Taylor Anderson fan. And I said, I think Kraig might be the number one Taylor Anderson stan out there, because she is the thing that I love about Taylor is you look at the stat line and it's always like, 35 to 45 assists per match. But then you look and it's like, she's had 4 or 5 blocks. She's had 7 or 8 digs. She has 3 or 4 kills. Like, she is just so consistent and she can do so many things. And I think even you've said it, like, I don't know that she gets the recognition or the attention she deserves, not just because she's a great setter, but she's a great all around player too.
Yeah, 100%. And she deserves more credit for sure in my mind. Like, the last time I checked anyway, she was leading the Big Ten in assists, and she still has not been Big Ten setter of the week. Like, how does that happen, man? How does that happen? Give her some love.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Kraig. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I will let you tell people where they can find you and how they can listen to your podcast. And I'll say it's Kraig Bowers, Joe Jackson, and Greg Braggs. Like I said, I listened to it the pregame show on my way into West Lafayette, and then the postgame show on my way out of West Lafayette. So go ahead and tell people where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, you can follow us at Boilers and Stands. Is our Boilers in the Stands podcast Twitter. You can follow me at Kraig Bowers 34. You can join Boiler Diehards on Facebook as well. And then lastly, to get to the actual podcast, it's a little bit funky because we are Boilers in the Stands, but we are on the Braggs in the Stands channel on YouTube. So if you're searching for us on YouTube, you have to go to Braggs in the Stands. Who's the guy who started all of this, Greg Braggs, who covers the Chicago Bears as well. And then our shows show up on there. If you're on like Apple, Spotify, or other podcast platforms, it's just under Boilers in the Stands. So I realize that's a little bit confusing. But nonetheless, that's all of the places that you can find me. Joe and I will have a show tomorrow. At some point tomorrow night, kind of talking about a deep dive into each player and what we saw. That was Joe's first time. He hasn't been to any practices or anything. So Joe is a basketball savant, so I'm really looking forward to hearing his deep, in-depth thoughts about what he saw from each of these guys as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kraig, and appreciate everybody listening to another edition of the Boiler Banter Podcast. I'll check you out all real soon.